I think it's wonderful. I think it's a fantastic initiative. And it's certainly given me a great opportunity to clarify my thoughts by the very, very perceptive questions that you have asked. And I wish all your colleagues well. And I hope that you can take this. This is the kind of conversation we need in Parliament. This is the kind of conversation we need on TV channels. This is the kind of conversation we need in the streets, because India must become an erudite, educated, sensible country and a sensible democracy. I think you'll make a contribution to that. Congratulations to you.
I'm a union minister with us today in this live session. बहुत बहुत नमस्कार सर. ये हमारा सौभाग्य है कि आज हम आपके साथ इस लाइव सेशन में जुड़े हैं.
Namaskar to you as well, and to all your colleagues and friends. Very enjoyable.
Starting with the very first question, sir. Recently, the first virtual summit of Quad took place. Quad, which is Quadrilateral Security Dialogue between United States, Japan, Australia, and India in regards to its vision of free and open Indo-Pacific region, specifically to counter China's expansionist policy. So how much do you have faith in this Quad arrangement?
Well, I think that this is something that goes back to our time. It's something that has matured very, very slowly, though somewhat steadily. And perhaps it was important. It was important for balancing of forces. But interesting that we should have 4 important countries, including our own, trying to balance with China. I mean, that is itself, it speaks volumes of the significance, the importance, and the weight of China. Now, having said that, I must also say that every country has its own priorities and own methods of resolving issues. And China is a neighbor to us. China impacts the other Quad countries as well, but it's our neighbor. And we've had both pleasant and unpleasant moments with China. And we will ultimately have to find our own peace with China. Somebody else can't do it for us. We agree with the broad principles of Quad. We agree with the aspiration that there should not be any impediments as far as the sea is concerned, and free passage is very important. But Chinese are also not entirely indifferent towards international principles, but how to persuade them and how to get them to come on board is something that perhaps we will be able to do better than the other countries in the Quad. China has a very special sensitivity about the East China Sea, as it's called, or South China Sea, and so do other partner countries in the Quad. So we'll have to find a solution. It cannot be a confrontation. It will have to be a solution in the end. And I do believe that as a neighbor with China, with very complicated but very meaningful potential for dealing with China, we may have a little more to offer and a little more to be careful about than the other countries that are involved. But let us see how things evolve as we go forward.
So since we are talking about the Quad, so it becomes extremely relevant when we talk about Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which is cited to be world's largest trade deal. India refused to being part of it, while the other 2 members of the Quad, which is Japan and Australia, are part of it. So, how do you see this decision of Government of India and its effect on future prospect for India?
Well, to be to be honest, it is a bit awkward and a bit difficult. But my own party has my senior colleagues who take different view. Much of the negotiation for RCEP was done during our government. Mr. Anand Sharma was the Commerce Minister, led those, and I think he still believes that RCEP is essential and it is a forward-looking, future determination thing for us. On the other hand, my colleague Mr. Jairam Ramesh has some reservations. So to say something absolutely definitive would not be possible till we've resolved some of these matters within our party. But having said that, it's very clear that the reason why we were resisting the invitation to join RCEP, having worked towards it, is because of lack of confidence in our own economic structures. If we were more confident, we would have embraced it willingly. But we do believe that there are important issues that we still need to resolve in terms of the economy at home, and that the burden, as there will be, of sharing with other countries opportunities might be too much for the level at which we find ourselves today. So ultimately, we have to prepare. You want to go and play in the Olympic Games, you have to do a lot of work to prepare for it. You can't arrive in the Olympic arena without the hard work that goes into prepare yourself. And I think maybe the government came to a conclusion that we were not yet ready, but it can't be postponed indefinitely. Sooner or later, we'll have to be there. Therefore, the priority should be to ensure that we prepare for the contest ahead.
Uh, so we have talked about the China issue. We have seen last year the most vulnerable condition between India China. What, according to you, should be now India's policy towards China in regard to the fact that China, being the biggest exporter of goods to India, even during the past years of conflict in Galwan Valley and the parts of Arunachal Pradesh, and also if we believe in some report that China is going to be the new global power overtaking USA.
Well, so you just said it. If someone is going to be a new global power, then you cannot just ignore them. But it's going to be a multilateral world. It's not going to be a bilateral or unilateral world. I mean, there are lots of players in the game now, and India can be and must be a very important player. But we must sort out our relationship with China. We have an enormous trade deficit. The Chinese, for one reason or another, are exporting a lot more than they're importing for India, and that's a problem that we've faced for a long time. When we were in government, we thought the way around that problem was to get more investment, Chinese investment into India, as a set-off against the trade deficit. But our public perception is still not so positive about Chinese investments in the country. Although quietly we know that there is a fair amount of Chinese investment, but the public perception accepts Japanese investment, European investment, UK investment, American investments a little more enthusiastically than the Chinese. When I travel in Southeast Asia, or parts of Africa, I find huge symbols of Chinese presence. And, the presidential palace having been built by China, a major stadium having been built by China, Sri Lanka, a major road to the airport having been built by China, and nobody is self-conscious about admitting this to be the fact. We are still in India, we are still a little bit reluctant to do this. And therefore, perceptions will have to change in people-to-people contact, which is growing at a rapid pace. A rapid pace. A lot of Indian tourists are now going to China, and people don't even know that a lot of Indian tourists are going to China. I think greater people-to-people contact is the answer. It will happen. We should share more of our cultural events. We should participate more in our people's events, and then the perceptions will change. But as I said, it's a difficult relationship, and we have to work on it constantly, find some solutions. There are no easy solutions. At the same time, I had assumed that our peace and tranquility agreement with China was working, and it had worked for a reasonable period. We didn't have any casualties on the Chinese border after 1962, 1967, the line of control. But suddenly things went out of hand. Now there is too much fog and too much mist there. We don't know. We don't know the truth. We don't know what exactly happened, and therefore we don't know what has been put right and how much has it been put right. I think we need to understand much better. Some very senior retired army officers have been writing, generals have been writing about how we have faltered, that we have somehow slipped up. But the government, of course, doesn't admit that, and serving officers will never admit that. So there is an ambiguity and a gray area that we need to figure out. You cannot do something moving forward unless you admit yourself the truth of what has happened. And if you keep that truth in an ambiguous state, then you'll never really be able to solve the problem as you move forward. So as I said, difficult, complicated relationship. We will find some solutions, and we must. Yeah.
Um, uh, as you said, sir, in the meantime, we'll find out some solutions, removing all the ambiguities. Last year, when Indian government banned the Chinese apps in India, it was out of to satisfy the national interest of defense and security. But how far are we able to manage the economic development with the defense and security when it comes to the national interest?
Well, it depends on what we believe is more important. I mean, I think that we are a nuclear power. We spent a lot of money in nuclear weapons. There is general consensus that this was important. This was important for strategic purposes. But there's also a view that when you go nuclear, you're supposed to cut down your expenses on conventional weapons because you're supposed to have a deterrent. But have we really succeeded in our nuclear policy being a policy of deterrence? Is a big question. We are still spending a lot of money on conventional forces and conventional weapons. And if this money has to be spent, then obviously there will be less to spend on economic welfare. So it's Hobson's choice, a little here, a little there. But where do you finally stand? Now, one thing that you need to do really is to put the economy on the right track. If the economy is good, there'll be money for weapons. And if the economy is good, that itself, I think, is a major deterrence to other countries. Because the economy is good not just for yourself. When economy is good, you also become an attractive destination for other countries, including China. So let's work on the economy a bit, and not hope that everything will be solved by a powerful military. Military plays a very important role, but army doesn't march on an empty stomach. So you've got to fill our soldiers' stomach, give them good uniforms, good weaponry, good protective gear, and then we will have the best of two worlds.
So now moving forward with the interview, recently, few days back, a very unfortunate incident took place where 23 of our brave hearts laid down their life in the service of nation while in an agitation with Naxalites. What do you think should be nation's approach towards Naxalism, acknowledging the fact that somewhere these anarchists are repercussions of isolation only? What can be done to include them back in the civil society alongside mending the harm done formally?
Well, I think that successive governments have tried to do a lot. Unfortunately, if we go by what we are seeing now, it hasn't worked. Allow me first to express my deepest sympathy and condolence to families of the brave soldiers who have been martyred in this terrible, terrible massacre and attack. But unfortunately, we seem to wake up each time there is a tragedy of this proportion. And for a few days, we talk about it, and then it gets forgotten and it's business as usual. I must admit that I don't know enough about the problem or its possible solution. But something tells me that we are underprepared as far as our policing and military is concerned. I think casualties of that number are completely unacceptable. Uh, we have to do a little bit more to be more robust in our preparation and our ability to defend ourselves. There's a larger question, of course, social, economic, political, etc., that needs to be resolved. I think that it can't be resolved without all political parties putting their heads together and working together. There must be a solution. There has to be a solution. We can't be at the war with our own people, but it's a warlike situation that's being created. And how long will we continue to suffer casualties is a big question. But if we put our heart to it and we apply our mind, I'm quite sure that we will find a solution. We found solutions for similar problems elsewhere. We found it in Punjab, we found it in Tamil Nadu or related area of Sri Lanka. We've tried to find it in Jammu and Kashmir, and people believe that things are looking a lot better. In UP, where you belong, we found the problem with the Baghis in Hind Morena in the UP Madhya Pradesh area. We did find solution. We found finally that Pulan Devi from amongst the Baghis ended up as an MP. So each problem of this nature has its social bearing, and therefore, if you understand that, you can find a solution as well. But it can't just be a military solution. I think that is something that's very clear.
Just highlighting one point that Naxalism is really an important issue that needs to be dealt, and all political parties really need to come together because it can't be solved alone with the military. So, India has enshrined in its constitution its secular nature. The discussions and the need of uniform civil code has been too persistent for last few years. And it also seems to be quite anomalous to a layman to find Hindu laws and Muslim laws persisting in a secular state. Sir, you have been a law minister. I want to know your views on why or why not India needs uniform civil code.
I I know that this is a directive principle, and therefore I must show my deference and respect to directive principle. But I have a personal issue here. Nobody's ever explained to me that uniformity is necessarily a good thing. Unity is a good thing, I understand. But uniformity is a good thing, I'm not quite sure. My hair is not like yours. My glasses are not like yours. Um, there may be 100 things about you that are different from me. Now, why should we be exactly the same in order to achieve something which is of national value? I'm not quite sure. I believe diversity in every form is wonderful. Diversity in every form. And diversity means that it may be something that I don't like, but I have no business to tell you what to do. I have only business to tell myself what to do. Now, if this is true about the general attitude towards our constitution, towards the individual in this country, then suddenly to make an exception and say, but in your personal laws, you must be the same. I've also often asked people, and they've never given me an answer, that when you have a uniform civil code, will there be a uniform funeral code as well? Will I, as a Muslim, have to be cremated, or somebody else, as a non Muslim, have to be buried? Or if you follow the Parsi towers of silence, will we have to go that path when we leave this earth? These are big questions. Nobody ever answers them. Nobody ever answers them. Then you look at uniform civil code, there is, if you devoid of all the misinterpretations that have been imposed on it, there is an easy way of getting divorced in Islam. There was a time when divorce was considered a bad thing. We now live in a world where no-fault divorce has become a way of life. Now, if you have a system that provides for a no-fault quick divorce, will that be applied over everybody, or will it be a system in which you have to wait 20 years to get divorced? This is a very, very important question. So nobody ever, when they talk about uniform civil code, they think that it's a magic wand. Uniform civil code, let's have uniform civil code. If you oppose it, then you're a cantankerous and unwanted idiot, etc. Says that uniformity is good. Nobody ever tells me. If tomorrow we said that there will be a single food code in the country, meaning we are all vegetarians, will that be accepted? And why is it? I can give you 100 reasons for persuading people to become vegetarians. 100 reasons. But I can't say that I will make a law that you can't eat non-vegetarian food. Now, if somebody told me that there is something good about, vegetarian food, and therefore good in terms of everybody having vegetarian food, I would be fine. I'll have no problem. But nobody ever tells me any of these things. They just assume what they're saying is what will happen. In a way, Uniform Civil Code is already available, but it's optional. The Special Marriages Act gives a couple a choice to follow a single modern secular system, but that's the choice. It is not dictated upon them. It's a choice.
Are we actually moving in the direction of having uniform civil code when last week Chief Justice really appreciates the uniform civil code model of Goa?
Well, there are views about this. Goa has certain things, but some people have remarked that Goa doesn't really have a uniform civil code. They follow the Portuguese code. It's not a uniform civil code. They follow the Portuguese code. Some of it has very good elements. In what context the chief was quoted, one doesn't know, but certainly there are people who talk about one country, one system, one election, one way of life, etc. There are people who say that, and they would certainly say one country, one law. But it's going to be a long time before people will be persuaded. If people can be persuaded, nothing like it.
Taking away the key point that India needs unity, not uniformity. So, even in the 21st century, religion, secularism, and state is an ever important issue. Recently, Mr. Wasim Rizvi filed a petition marking 26 verses of Holy Scripture Quran which he thinks are controversial to him. Now, the state has to decide what stance it would take regarding a religious issue. Even in triple talaq, we saw inherent religious custom being targeted and made criminalized. What is your take on how and to what extent should state interfere in the religious practices?
Well,
How
I
to
mean,
tackle?
the Supreme Court is very clear on it that the state has no right to indulge, to interfere with religion. But there is, of course, a constitutional restriction on religion to the extent that just anything being labeled religion will not work. You have to ensure that it is actually a religious text that supports that particular point of view of religion. And whatever rituals are associated with religion, that they are really important rituals without which religion becomes incomplete. So basically, basically, the debate that has happened on triple talaq has been misinformed debate, and I certainly believe the government is extremely misinformed about triple talaq. The Supreme Court said there is no such thing as triple talaq. Now, if there is no such thing as triple talaq, what is the government punishing people for when they say you're being punished for giving triple talaq? It's like my saying something in the air which affects nobody. You can't punish me for something that doesn't affect anyone. If triple talaq doesn't exist, then it doesn't exist as a crime either. But that's another matter. The problem is being misinformed about religion and misinformed about what is religion, etc. And I think if we honestly look at what is religion, we won't have a problem. Now, tomorrow, if somebody decides, today somebody says this thing should be removed from the Quran. Tomorrow somebody says that it's, in Christianity, how can you have God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost? How can you do that, etc. Now, these are all matters of faith. Faith and logic are not necessarily compatible. We all try for a rational modern world to explain faith in terms that would be acceptable to a reasonable person and to an objective person. But there are elements that you can't explain. There are elements of religion that you just have to accept. As long as they don't hurt anybody, you shouldn't have a problem. If I believe praying to a tree is going to give me something, or praying to a stone is going to give me something, or praying by turning towards the Kaaba will give me something, why should anybody else have a problem with it? Why should they say no, no, no? This is not right. This is something that you shouldn't do. But if I do something that hurts another person, then first look at whether the religion really requires you to hurt somebody. It may be wrong. That's not what religion is all about. Or you prevent it by saying, no, despite the fact that this is your religion, you can't hurt somebody. So if there's a religion that says you sacrifice human beings, obviously the courts and the country will say that we don't accept this. We don't accept this religion at all, because our religion must be within certain parameters.
So there has been disparity among the communities residing in India, whether it is in terms of economic growth or literacy. And when we talk about the Sacha Committee report, the conditions faced by Indian Muslims are cited to be vulnerable. What has changed after such a committee report, and how much have Indian Muslims progressed with the recommendations? Because it's almost more than a decade of such a committee report.
Well, sadly, such a committee was an honest document that said that despite the advances we've made, the minority communities, particularly Muslims, have slipped behind and have remained behind. And they had a plan to get them quickly to come and catch up with people. Unfortunately, it didn't work. There was so much propaganda against it, and there was people dragging their feet. States didn't comply with the aspirations of such a committee. And I believe that many years later, the Kundu committee looked at what had happened, and if anything, the statuses slipped back rather than move forward. It was a fantastic thought that you help not by isolation, but by integration. So you went and said, we will build a school where minority and majority can study together, but minority will have a chance to study. That was the concept. We'll build roads where minority can use the roads together. We will build roads. But unfortunately, there was so much propaganda against it, and it sort of was lost. I think it's an all-time historical loss that people resisted the Structure Committee recommendations and didn't allow them to be implemented.
Uh, Sir, a very persistent issue which is being taken up about the marital rapes. India is one of the 36 countries where marital rapes hasn't been criminalized. And a study by UN Population Fund states that more than two-thirds of the married women in India are sufferers of the same. But in India, we do not have seen much debates about the same issue, uh, citing that it will be a threat to the institution of marriage. So, what do you think? Is it the high time that we need to bring some laws regarding this?
My view is that there are enough laws available to criminalize bad behavior, whether in marriage or outside marriage. There are enough laws if we effectively want to implement them. Bringing the policeman into the bedroom is the worst thing that you can do. We already have our hands full with tiresome policemen, and now you're going to invite them into the bedroom. It's the worst thing that can be done. Worst thing. There should be complete endeavor and effort to ensure that this kind of assault, if you call it an assault, is punished with very great seriousness. But there's nothing special about introducing the label of a sexual assault. An assault is bad enough. Now, if a person in a marriage is not assaulted sexually, but is assaulted physically, is that less of a blame to the husband who is causing the domestic violence? So I think domestic violence in any form, and this could be a form of domestic violence, should be treated more seriously. But being being too anxious to bring the policeman into the home and into the family, I personally think may be a bad idea.
Moreover, it would it would be a problem to even codify the things. But yes, whatever laws we have must be implemented with utmost sincerity.
Quite right, quite right.
So, over 3.5 crores cases are pending across the courts in India, where many a times justice becomes a far-fetched dream due to excessive stretch of time. Irrespective of many committees for reforms being formed, major changes in judiciary has been done since decade. So, what is your take on this issue, and what changes are the need of the hour for increasing the efficiency of Indian judiciary?
To tell you the truth, lawyers have to change. Everything else works, but the lawyers don't change. The lawyers must take their job more seriously. We are now on a computerized grid across the country. A great deal of information exchanges are being done. Uh, Courts are being computerized and are doing much better. A great deal of improvement has happened, but of course, the bottom line is more courts and more judges. If we don't address more courts and more judges, we have a very, very bad ratio compared to other countries in the world. And I think that courts are now working very hard on alternative dispute resolution, on mediation, conciliation, etc. All this will take time to work, but I think that we are moving in the right direction. Having said that, I agree that it's criminal to make people wait so many years to get relief from courts. I think there has to be a major attitudinal change other than the fact that we must provide better infrastructure. I think we've learned a lot during the COVID, the way we used technology during the COVID pandemic. Uh, we could continue using some of that effectively to ensure that there is faster dispensing of justice.
So you have been a lawyer. So I just want you to tell about the drift in the mindset that's required, because you said it's the lawyers who can change.
Well, if the lawyers understand that at a drop of a hat or a drop of a wig of a lawyer, as it were, you're not going to take adjournment, and that you will prepare well in time for your cases. I think that a lot of these problems will get resolved. When judges get tough about these things, people start saying this guy is a very sour judge, this guy is a very unfair judge, etc. He's being too harsh on me, etc. But I think in a nice sort of way, this is what people have to be persuaded to do.
So thank you, sir, for talking us in length about different issues, giving us an insightful information. So what do you think about this initiative of Kavi Varsha that we are bringing up?
Given me a great opportunity to clarify my thoughts by the very, very perceptive questions that you have asked. And I wish all your colleagues well. And I hope that you can take this. This is the kind of conversation we need. And I think it's wonderful. I think it's a fantastic initiative. And it's certainly given me a great opportunity to clarify my thoughts by the very, very perceptive questions that you have asked. And I wish all your colleagues well. And I hope that you can take this. This is the kind of conversation we need in Parliament. This is the kind of conversation we need on TV channels. This is the kind of conversation we need in the streets, because India must become an erudite, educated, sensible country and a sensible democracy. I think you'll make a contribution to that. Congratulations to you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your words. And thank you so much, sir, for joining. It's truly our honor to host you, sir, and to know about your thoughts.
Thank you, and goodbye. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye.